Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Brendan Fallon. Here are today's top stories. G7 leaders calling out China for supporting Russia and harming the global economy through its unfair trade practices. What's in the final G7 communique, and how is President Biden working to counter the communist regime? The U.S. and Ukraine swiftly reject conditions by Russia to end the war in Ukraine. That's as an American attack submarine arrives in Cuba, countering Russian naval presence on the island off the coast of Florida. The Supreme Court issues a major decision on gun rights and the power of the federal government, what the majority opinion says about bump stocks, and what the dissenting justices say. A federal probe is underway to determine if Boeing and other aircraft makers are using fake titanium on some of its recently produced planes. We'll tell you what investigators have discovered. Families of the Sandy Hook school shooting are closer to receiving funds from radio talk show host Alex Jones. A federal judge approves the liquidation of his assets. A happy birthday to the U.S. Army. We'll tell you about the festivities and hear about the values the Army represents. The American flag described as a symbol of hope that says we'll help defend you. Hear more from the Flag Day Foundation president when we return. The Supreme Court is striking down federal ban on bump stocks on guns. Bump stocks allow a shooter to convert a semi-automatic rifle into a weapon that can fire at a rate of hundreds of rounds a minute. The Trump administration imposed the ban after the 2017 Las Vegas shooting. In a 6-3 opinion, the justices ruled that the ban on machine guns doesn't apply to bump stocks. They wrote, quote, "A bump stock does not convert a semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun any more than a shooter with a lightning-fast trigger finger does. Even with a bump stock, a semi-automatic rifle will fire only one shot for every function of the trigger." The three liberal justices dissented. They wrote that striking down the ban hamstrings the government's efforts to keep machine guns from gunmen like the Las Vegas shooter. More problems for plane maker Boeing as a new investigation reveals the company may be using impure metal on some of its aircraft. The FAA investigation comes after a parts supplier discovered small holes in the material from corrosion. Boeing reported the FAA that the documentation for the titanium acquired through one of their distributors may have been falsified. The plane maker said it was removing any such parts from the airplanes prior to delivery and added there is no impact to safety. A final communique has just been released. G7 leaders are hammering China over its support for Russia and harmful trade practices. They're also warning the communist regime over its aggression in the Indo-Pacific. NTD's Iris Tao has more on day 2 of the G7 summit in Italy.
It's day 2 of the G7 summit here in Italy, and leaders are turning their focus to China. A senior administration official told us that today President Biden and G7 leaders are looking into more actions to counter China's non-market practices and efforts to dominate strategic sectors which undermine U.S. workers and industries. That's been a focus of the Biden administration, which just a month ago announced massive tariffs hikes on Chinese steel, EVs, and semiconductors.
It's not competition, it's cheating. And we've seen damage here in America.
And here at G7, President Biden is seeking to build a united front against China's actions. In a final copy of the G7 communique obtained by NTD, G7 leaders will together express concerns over China's actions leading to global spillovers and harmful overcapacity. They will also hammer China on its militarization in the South China Sea, malicious cyber activity around the world, and the human rights situation in Tibet, Xinjiang, and Hong Kong. More importantly, G7 leaders will call out China's ongoing support for Russia's defense industrial base. President Biden naming China and supporting Russia on Thursday.
China is not supplying weapons, but the ability to produce those weapons and the technology available to do it. So it is, in fact, helping Russia.
And President Biden is scheduled to fly back to the U.S. later tonight, wrapping up his 3-day trip to Italy. Reporting from Bari, Italy, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin today setting conditions to end the war. Ukraine already declined the offer, comparing Putin to Hitler. The U.S. says Putin is no position to set conditions for peace. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the story.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday gave conditions to end the war in Ukraine. He said Ukraine has to drop its NATO ambitions, hand over all 4 provinces claimed by Russia, and demilitarize itself. He said Western sanctions against Russia must also end. Ukraine quickly rejected the offer, saying it would amount to a surrender. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also commented.
Putin has illegally occupied sovereign Ukrainian territory. He is not in any position to dictate to Ukraine what they must do to bring about a peace.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today suggested Putin would continue the aggression even if Ukraine accepted the deal, saying he will not stop. It is the same thing that Hitler used to do. This is why we should not trust these messages. And lastly, a U.S. attack submarine arrived at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba today, and a Canadian Navy patrol ship sailed into Havana in support. That's after Russian warships arrived at the island, which lies just 100 miles off the coast of Florida, earlier this week. This comes as tensions between the U.S. and Russia are at a historic high. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The personal assets of radio talk show host Alex Jones will soon be liquidated. A federal bankruptcy court judge approved it today. Jones has to pay the lawsuit judgments brought by the families of the victims of the Sandy Hook school shooting. Jones and his company, Free Speech Systems, filed for bankruptcy protection in 2022. According to court documents, Jones personally has about $9 million in assets, including his home worth more than $2.5 million. Relatives of many victims of the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting won lawsuit judgments of more than $1.4 billion in Connecticut and $49 million in Texas. The judge has not yet ruled on liquidating Jones's company. The relatives said they were traumatized by Jones's comments and his followers' actions denying that the shooting happened. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is trying to smoke out illegal marijuana shops after New York State legalized cannabis for recreational use in 2021. Now, unlicensed shop owners are suing the city over what they say are violations of their due process rights. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the latest.
On March 31st, 2021, New York State passed the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. The bill legalized recreational marijuana and established an office to issue licenses for legal pot shops. Almost immediately, unlicensed operations grew like weeds across New York City. After failing to nip the problem in the bud 3 years ago, New York Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Adams are looking to enforce the 2021 bill's regulations. In April, Hochul granted the New York City Sheriff's Office the authority to shut down illicit dispensaries on the spot after an inspection. The operation has since closed down over 350 illegal shops, but alleged offenders say that the city and state are violating their constitutional rights. They argue that authorities are seizing their businesses without due process and have filed a federal class action lawsuit. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Governor Kathy Hochul is considering a ban on face masks in the New York City subway system. This over concerns about people shielding their identities while committing anti-Semitic acts. The potential policy would include exemptions for health, cultural, or religious reasons. Hochul's decision follows a recent incident where individuals frightened riders with anti-Semitic chants on a subway on Monday night. Meanwhile, video circulating on social media showed a confrontation that allegedly happened earlier in the day. A man in Union Square was recorded shouting something to the effect that he wants a return of Hitler. What he would have wiped out them out, a group of people waving Israeli flags, was also in the park at the time. Hochul said that she was in talks with lawmakers on potentially crafting a bill. The governor emphasized that masks should not be used to hide criminal behavior. Wishing a happy birthday to the United States Army, new recruits, current service members, and veterans alike gathered to celebrate the milestone. Festivities included singing, bugles, and cake. NTD's Fiona G. was there to find out more.
June 14th is the 249th birthday of the U.S. Army, and a birthday party has been held in Times Square to celebrate the event. The U.S. Army is the oldest branch of the U.S. military and is in fact older than the United States itself. Proud service members shared the history and values of the Army, as well as what it means to them to serve.
The Army has defended the nation and its interests for the last 249 years. And so we're proud to keep that tradition going here in New York City. The New York, all the way through World War II and Korea, was the hub of the United States Army. So we have this great tradition of service in New York City.
So the Army values, one of those are loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. So I think setting the example of what it means to selflessly serve, putting the nation and the others before yourself is a good example to put before the public.
I've done something meaningful. I've changed people's lives all over the world, and being a recruiting commander is my most special job because now I have a chance to bring in the next generations of soldiers so they can serve this nation.
Onlookers shared how they felt watching the festivities and learning about the values of the Army.
I would say thank you very much to the U.S. Army, and I'm very much appreciative of U.S. Army.
I've seen the event over there going on around an hour ago. So far, everything has been so good. Keep protecting the U.S., I guess. Happy birthday to the U.S. Army.
The United States Army continues to uphold the theme of honoring the past and protecting the future as it raises the next generation of leaders. Fiona G., NTD News.
People living in the Northeast will see Mother Nature display her beauty this summer in the form of bugs, specifically. The mass arrival of cicadas, it's a natural occurrence that scientists say hasn't happened for over 2 centuries.
A lot of things in the world today that get freaked out about. Cicadas aren't one of them.
That's according to Gene Kritsky, an expert in cicadas. He says the reasons the insects come out in such large numbers is for their survival.
When they come out, they emerge in these massive numbers. Their whole survival strategy is to come out in such large numbers that all the available predators can eat all the cicadas they want, and there's still millions left. And the predators get sick of eating them.
Kritsky has been studying these insects for 50 years. He says that survival mechanism for the cicadas also includes a mating ritual, one that he says will become pretty loud and hard to ignore. The insects may look creepy, but the biologist says he enjoys studying them.
They've got these red eyes, black bodies, orange-colored wing veins on these membranous wings. I love the fact they come out in these big numbers. I like that I can predict when they come out. It's a scientific experiment at any time.
There are 15 different broods in the Northeast, but they only come out at 17 and 13-year cycles. This year, 2 broods have overlapped, creating a rare phenomenon. It could be alarming for people who aren't comfortable with the flying bugs.
Today is Flag Day. The date commemorates June 14th, 1777, when the Continental Congress determined the composition of the American flag. NTD's Andrew Thomas speaks with the second-generation president of the National Flag Day Foundation to learn more about the significance of our nation's banner and what it means to him.
On June 14, 1885, Bernard J. Sagrand instructed his students to write an essay about what the American flag meant to them. The 18-year-old Wabaca, Wisconsin native would pass away in 1932. But in 1946, community leaders established the town's Flag Day celebration to honor his passion for a banner now recognized worldwide.
Why is Flag Day so important?
Our flag stands for so many incredible things. And when somebody says, well, how important is the flag? Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask Francis Scott Key, or you'd have to ask the men at Iwo Jima that stood it up during the battle, or you'd have to ask the firemen and policemen at Ground Zero, who the first thing they did was raise the flag in the rescue efforts.
On June 14, 1777, the Continental Congress decided that the flag of the United States of America would feature 13 alternating red and white stripes and 13 white stars in a field of blue. This represented the Union as a new constellation. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed June 14th as Flag Day in 1916. In 1949, President Harry S. Truman signed the formal observance of the holiday into law.
It's the symbol that says, we'll help you, defend you, no matter who you are or where you are, if wrong is being committed. So it's a focus on our flag. It's a focus on what she means.
So what should Americans be thinking about on Flag Day?
Well, I'll tell you what I think about on Flag Day. I think about my freedoms. I think about how I am able to talk with you over the air right now, and we can have a discussion about what our beliefs are. one of the few countries in the world, if not the only country in the world, that this can happen.
Janik says the American flag is more than a symbol that represents our precious freedoms. It guides the nation.
And we know that freedom isn't free, and we know with that freedom becomes a real big responsibility, because we're not free to do whatever we want. We're free to do what's right. And that's part of why the flag is so important, because the flag creates our moral compass. It gives us our direction for right and wrong, and we can never lose sight of that.
Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
When we come back, several cities on the West Coast and in Hawaii are now considered impossibly unaffordable. And in China, a Me Too activist has been sentenced to prison after being found guilty for undermining state power. We'll return with that and more after this break.
Stay tuned to get 2 rolls of alien tape free. You wouldn't stick your mother-in-law on the wall, but you could with alien tape. It just sticks. Just peel and stick to make anything stay in place quick. Brick, pavers, marble, tile, plastic, even leather. Nothing works better than alien tape. You wouldn't stick your fishbowl on a moving car, but you could with alien tape. The secret is nano-stick technology that grabs and locks on to secure one side of the surface to the other. Alien tape secures in seconds, then twist, pull, and rinse to reuse. Call or go online to get your first roll of alien tape for just $19.99, plus shipping and processing. But to make this deal really stick, we'll give you 2 more rolls absolutely free. You get 3 rolls of alien tape for one low price. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-490-1364 or go to tryalientape.com. So call 1-800-490-1364 or order online at tryalientape.com.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. A few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did.
Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor today, and your first month's gift will be matched.
Thank you.
China's foreign ministry said today it firmly opposes any country or organization that challenges its judicial sovereignty. That's after a Chinese court convicted 2 activists for what authorities called subverting state power. It's a charge the regime commonly uses to punish dissidents. An independent Chinese journalist named Huang Xueqin was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Another activist surnamed Wan was sentenced to more than 3 years. The charges against the pair were based on gatherings they held for young Chinese people where they would discuss social issues, including the Me Too movement. Huang also reported on issues like the 2019 pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. 2 diplomats who requested anonymity said consular representatives from the US, the UK, Germany, France, Denmark, and New Zealand attempted to attend the court proceedings. China rejected their entry. In France, alliances are forming 2 weeks ahead of the parliament elections. Two polarizing issues center around France's identity and immigration. NTD's international correspondent David Vives has the details.
With only 2 weeks remaining before the election, the time is short for parliament groups to prepare their campaign, including form alliances, prepare a campaign program, and sometimes choose leadership. One topic seems to be shaping those different campaigns by itself: immigration. According to a recent Ipsos poll, this is a top priority for the French after quelling the inflation.
There are migration policies that are opposed by around 70% of the population and which, despite everything, have been maintained for 30-40 years. There comes a point when this poses a democratic problem. There's at least a link between delinquency and immigration that exists, and we see increasingly sordid regular news stories.
According to policy analyst Philippe Fabry, the current Israel operations in Gaza has also been a quite divisive topic.
There are too many immigrants, too much Islam. This is really a point of division. When you think of how all different parties are divided on this during the European elections on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Immigration is also a strong polarizing issue. The left wing has been accused of anti-Semitism by the nationalist right-wing's party and Emmanuel Macron's party. On the other hand, the Rassemblement National, the nationalist party, is being called out by the left-wing party and Macron's party as it looks to increase border security and overturn current immigration policies.
There's what I'd call the Islamo-allogeneic left wing. In other words, left-wing parties that favors Muslim populations and, more generally, populations of foreign origin. On the other hand, in reaction, there's a right wing that's taking shape, centered on the very question of identity, and reject immigration but also Islam ideology.
The stance on immigration by nationalists is also being harshly criticized in the streets. Some 100,000 protesters are expected to demonstrate in Paris tomorrow. According to polls, the Nationalist Party takes the lead in the intentions of votes. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
In a major legal development, a federal judge in Louisiana has blocked the Biden administration from enforcing a new rule related to gender identity in 4 states. The rule is billed as protecting LGBT students from discrimination based on their gender identity in schools and colleges. District Judge Terry Doty issued a preliminary injunction yesterday. It bars a Department of Education rule from taking effect in Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, and Idaho. Those states had argued that unless the rule was blocked, schools would be required to allow boys and men who identify as women to use female bathrooms and locker rooms. Judge Doty said enacting the changes in the final rule would subvert the original purpose of Title IX, which protects girls and women from discrimination. A new report says home ownership is impossibly affordable in several major U.S. cities. NTD's Don Ma tells us what that means in today's Business Matters.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Several cities on the West Coast and in Hawaii are now considered impossibly unaffordable. 5 cities made the list for most unaffordable places to buy a home, according to the annual Demographic International Housing Affordability Report. Unsurprisingly, the most expensive U.S. cities are in California, San Jose, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. All made the top 10. Honolulu came in 6 out of 94 major markets surveyed in 8 countries. The report measures affordability by dividing the median price of a house by the gross median household income. It also identified the most affordable cities of the 94 major markets in the U.S. They are Pittsburgh, Rochester, and St. Louis. Meanwhile, the top impossibly unaffordable city in the world identified as Hong Kong. Meanwhile, working remotely comes with increased flexibility and a better work-life balance, but you might want to make sure you're actually working. Some Wells Fargo employees just found out the hard way. This week, Wells Fargo revealed that more than a dozen workers were fired for simulating keyboard activity. In other words, they were pretending to work, like using a device called a mouse jiggler that keeps your screen active while you're away. It's not clear what the employees were doing instead of working. A bank spokesperson declined to offer more details about the firings, saying only, quote, Wells Fargo holds employees to the highest standards and does not tolerate unethical behavior. Bloomberg reported the terminations via filings to the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Wells Fargo's crackdown on remote workers comes as the bank works to repair its brand. Since 2016, Wells Fargo has spent billions of dollars settling cases related to a scheme that led to over 2 million fake accounts being opened without consumers' consent. And gas prices are cheaper than last summer and miles away from where they were peaked 2 years ago. AAA says the national average for regular gas stood at $3.46 a gallon on Thursday. This is down $1.56 from the national record of $5.02 set in June of 2022. It's also down 13 cents from this point last year. Steadily lowering prices since mid-April have helped take pressure off cash-strapped consumers, and the cooling prices at the pump have also played a central role in helping to drive down inflation. Thank you very much, Brandon, and back to you.
Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. Join Tiffany Meyer for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. I'm Brendan Fallon. Have a great weekend.